Every single morning, for 43 years, she sat in the same chair, same window, same cup of coffee going cold on the sill. She wasn't waiting for the mail. She wasn't waiting for a phone call. She was waiting for a knock on that door, from a man who promised her he'd come home. He never knocked. But he did leave her something, and the day she finally opened it, it destroyed her. His name was Corporal James Jimmy Caldwell, born 1948 in Howell County, Kentucky, a small town so quiet you could hear the creak from the main road. Jimmy was the kind of guy everyone knew, not famous, not flashy, just good. He coached Little League on Saturdays, helped neighbors fix their roofs after storms. Always the first one to show up and the last one to leave. And then there was Margaret Howell, Maggie. The girl next door, literally. They'd grown up across the same fence since they were 6 years old. He proposed to her on a Tuesday. Not a special occasion, not a fancy restaurant. He just showed up at her back door after his shift at the hardware store, a ring he'd been paying off for 6 months, and said, and this is from a letter he wrote years later, "Maggie, I know I'm not much, but I'm all yours if you'll have me." She said yes before he even finished the sentence. They planned the wedding for spring of 1969. But America had other plans. Jimmy got his draft notice in November 1968. He was 20 years old. He didn't run. He didn't protest. He said, "If it's got to be me, it's going to be me." That was just the kind of man he was. The night before he shipped out, Maggie made his favorite, beef stew with drop biscuits. They sat on the porch until 2 in the morning, not saying much, just being together. The way you do when you know time is running out. He left on a grey Wednesday morning. She stood at the end of the driveway until his car disappeared. Then she went inside, sat down in the kitchen chair by the window, and she waited. They wrote to each other every week. Every single week. Jimmy from the jungle, Maggie from that kitchen table. His letters were Jimmy through and through, funny when he could be, honest when he had to be. He told her about the heat that felt like wearing a wet wool blanket 24 hours a day. About his buddy Darnell from Memphis, who could make anyone laugh even when shells were dropping 3 miles out. About how he looked at her picture every night before he closed his eyes. "I keep your photo in my left breast pocket right over my heart," he wrote. "The guys tease me for it. I tell them I don't care. You're the reason I know which direction home is." But as 1969 turned into 1970, something shifted. The jokes got shorter. The silences between sentences got wider. He started writing things like, "I need you to know that whatever happens, I chose this. I chose to be here so you don't have to be afraid back home. And promise me you won't spend your whole life waiting on me, Maggie. Promise me you'll live." She didn't understand those lines then. She thought he was just tired. Soldiers got tired. He'd be home by Christmas, she told herself. He'd promised. In March of 1970, during the Battle of Ripcord in the Ashar Valley, Jimmy's platoon walked into an ambush. 11 men went in. 4 came out. Jimmy Caldwell was listed as missing in action. Not killed, not captured. Missing. And that word, that one terrible word, became the thing that kept Maggie frozen in time for the rest of her life. Because killed has a funeral. Killed has a grave you can visit and cry on, and eventually somehow walk away from. But missing means maybe. And maybe is the cruelest word in the English language when you love someone. Years passed. The government sent a liaison officer in 1971, then a chaplain in 1973. Each time, she offered them coffee and listened, and said thank you, and went back to her chair. Her family begged her to move on. Her friends fixed her up on dates she never showed up for. A doctor told her in 1978 that the grief was making her physically ill. She smiled and said, "I'm not grieving, I'm waiting." She turned down a marriage proposal in 1982 from a good man, a kind man, with tears in her eyes, and went home and sat in that chair. In 2013, the Department of Defense's POW Me Accounting Agency made contact with Maggie, now 64 years old, still living in the same house in Howell County, Kentucky. They had found remains in Vietnam's Ashar Valley. Dental records confirmed. Corporal James Thomas Caldwell. He had died on March 18, 1970. the same day as the ambush. He never made it out of that jungle. But the remains weren't the only thing they found. Tucked inside what was left of his jacket, protected somehow, impossibly, after 43 years, was a sealed envelope. His handwriting, her name on the front, no postmark, never sent. Written, the investigators believed, the night before the ambush. She didn't open it for 3 days, she just held it. When she finally did, alone, at dawn, in that chair by the window, this is what it said. My Maggie. I'm writing this because tomorrow doesn't feel certain. It hasn't felt certain for a while, and I've been too stubborn to say so. You know how I am. I need you to hear me. Not the version of me that tries to be strong for you, the real one. The one that is scared tonight and misses you so bad it's a physical ache. If you're reading this, it means I kept one promise I didn't want to make. I promised myself that if I couldn't come home, you would still know. You would still know everything. So here's everything. I have loved you since we were 6 years old, and you threw a rock at Billy Mercer because he pushed me off my bike. I thought, this girl right here is the bravest thing I've ever seen. I've thought so every day since. I am so sorry I won't be there on a Tuesday afternoon to show up at your back door. I am so sorry for the porch we didn't get to sit on, for the kids we talked about, for the Christmas mornings and the Sundays and the ordinary Wednesdays that were supposed to be ours. Please don't wait for me, Maggie. Please. You have so much living left to do, and I will be so proud watching you do it from wherever I end up. Don't you dare sit in that chair by the window. You go out and see the world. You laugh loud. You fall in love again, and don't you feel 1 second of guilt about it. Not 1 second. That's an order from your corporal. I'm keeping your photo right here, over my heart, just like always. All of it was worth it. You were worth all of it. Yours, always and completely. Jimmy. She folded the letter carefully, set it on the table, and for the first time in 43 years, she left the chair by the window. She walked outside. She stood in the morning light, and she cried. Jimmy Caldwell received a full military burial in Howell County, Kentucky, on November 11, 2013, Veterans Day. 43 years after he died, he finally came home. Maggie stood at the graveside, holding the letter in one hand and the 2 gold wedding bands in the other, the ones she had never stopped wearing, even all these decades, even on the hand of a woman who was never technically a bride. She placed both rings on top of the casket before they lowered it. She leaned down and whispered something. Nobody heard it. Nobody asked. Some people say Maggie wasted her life waiting. I don't see it that way. I think she made a choice. Every single morning, she chose love over convenience. She chose faithfulness over moving on. She chose to believe in a man who deserved to be believed in. Was it the right choice? That's not for any of us to say. But it was her choice, and she made it freely every single day for 43 years. Here's what Jimmy's letter teaches us. The people we love need to hear it. Not someday. Not when things calm down. Not when you figure out the right words. Now. Today. Because some people write their most important letter the night before an ambush, and it takes 43 years to arrive. Don't let your letter go unsent. Jimmy Caldwell, Corporal, U.S. Army, Howell County, Kentucky. He never stopped loving her, and she never stopped waiting.